My name is Wayne Aker, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to use the CSS Injector module to tweak the design of your Drupal website. This question comes up a lot in our site builder level class at drupaltutor.com. Students who don't necessarily want to build a whole custom theme on their own, but they want to tweak the design, make it look a little different, and they want to know how to do that. In that case, I'll often recommend the CSS Injector module. So for example, here we're looking at a Bartik theme website. Maybe they want to change the look of this tag field, or they want to make the sidebar wider. If you know a little bit of CSS, these are things you can easily do with the CSS Injector module. So let me show you how we can do them. First, we need to install the CSS Injector module. So installs like any normal Drupal module. All right, after it's installed, I'm going to let's open this particular node here in one tab, and then I'm going to open a second tab under configuration so that I can move back and forth between the CSS and the view of a node. So the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is how we can expand this sidebar. So under configuration, there is an option under development for CSS Injector. And if you click on here, you'll see right out of the box, it'll say no CSS injection rules have been set up. So our first step is to create a new rule. And you can create multiple, they call them rules, but you can think about them as being multiple CSS files. And you can decide which pages you want different CSS files to show up on. I'm going to make one that's just site-wide. So I'm going to call this rule site-wide. And if I wanted to restrict it, like maybe I just wanted to show up on my blog page or my blog pages, I can restrict it to certain pages down here. This works exactly like the blocks interface. So if you're familiar with that, then this should be familiar here. If you leave it blank, it'll show up on every page, which is what we want here. So let's start with the sidebar. We can add any CSS code we want to this rule. So if I want to expand this sidebar, the first thing we'll need to do is figure out what the CSS selector is for the sidebar. So if you're using Chrome or if you're using Firefox with the Firebug plugin, you should have an option if you right-click that says Inspect Element. If you're in Firefox, it'll say Inspect Element with Firebug. And this will allow you to look at the HTML code if you're not familiar with it, and you can sort of hover over, and you'll notice up in here it kind of highlights what areas you're looking at. So we can find the sidebar, and you can see it here. It's called Sidebar First, and that's the sort of wrapper around the entire sidebar region. And over on the right-hand side of this inspector, it shows us the CSS rules that are being applied to this region once I select it. And here is the CSS rule for the width. So it's currently set to 240 pixels. So what if I want to make it 360 pixels? Okay, so 50% bigger. The easiest way to do this will be to highlight, and let's copy the rule that's already there. And then I'm going to go back to my other tab where I have the CSS Injector open. I'm going to paste that in, and let me reformat this a little bit so it's easier to read. This is actually going to change the width for both the first sidebar and the second sidebar. And in this case, let's make it 360 pixels wide. And then I will save. This point, if I refresh, okay, my sidebar is now wider. Let me close this down a little bit. You can see it's bigger. However, I have a problem. My content region is not beside it anymore. The problem is that in order to make this sidebar wider, I need to make the content area smaller so that they'll fit next to one another. So again, I need to highlight something here in the content region and choose Inspect Element. And if I go up a couple levels, I should be able to find the wrapper around the entire content area. And here it is. Okay, it's div ID content. This could be different if you're using a different theme. In the Bartik theme, it looks like this. And again, over here on this side, we can see that here's the CSS selector that specifies the width at 720. So I'm going to copy that, go back to my rule in my other tab, paste it, and let's see, we did the other one, we increased the other one by 120, so I'm going to decrease this one by 120 and make it 600, and I'll choose to save. And if I refresh now, all right, now the width of the sidebar is wider and the content area, if it's beside it, it's narrower. And this will work on every page. So if we go back to the home page, you'll see that this is the same sort of split is in effect. All right, another thing that comes up a lot is, especially in the Bartik theme, this tags field is quite small, and it's also not the label is not bolded, so it's kind of hard to see down here. So a lot of times I've had several times students ask me, how can I make this bolder? How can I make it bigger or make it match the font for the rest of the content? So we can do that again with CSS Injector. So again, if we click on the tags and choose Inspect Element, we can go in here and we can find the CSS rules that specify the font size. So you can see here where it specifies font size as being 0.8 EM, so that's 80% of its normal size, or of the normal size fonts on this site. That's why it's smaller. And also the label, which is what I'm highlighted on now, is font weight normal instead of font weight bold. So if I want to make this bigger and I want to make the label bold, then I can again copy some of this CSS out and put it into my style sheet in CSS Injector. Now I've already found the right selectors. I'm going to copy them in here because there's a couple. This is a little bit trickier one than the sidebar. Right, here are the selectors that I need to use in order to change the font size so that it matches the rest of them. Make the font match, because if you notice I don't know how easily this comes through on the video, but this is Helvetica, I think, and everything else in here is Times New Roman, or it's Georgia. Let's see. Yeah, this is Georgia up here, and this is Helvetica font. I don't know why they chose a different font, but they did. But this should make them match font-wise, and then this will set the label to be bold. So again, I'll save this, come to my other tab and refresh, and there we go. Now the tags are in bold, or well, the tag label is in bold, and the font size and style matches the rest of the text. All right, so that's just some of the things you can do with CSS Injector. Obviously, since you're putting any CSS in, you pretty much can change anything in the theme here. I don't recommend designing your entire theme this way, but if you have just a few small tweaks, if you have a Drupal theme you like, but just a few small things you want to change, and you know CSS, the CSS Injector module is a good choice to implement that. And that's how you use it. Again, you can find it at drupal.org under CSS Injector.